Well, I am so thrilled today because one of the women that I've been reading about and reading her books and things throughout the years is joining us today from Massachusetts. She is the author of this wonderful book, Negotiating at Work Turns Small Wins into Big Gains. Fabulous book for women and for men, but
Yep.
especially for women that really need this. Let me tell you a little bit about Deborah. She's right here with me across the miles, but I want to just do a quick introduction just so you get to know who she is and why I'm so excited that she's here. Uh, Dr. Deborah Kolb is Professor for Women in Leadership, Emeritus, and co-founder of the Ford Foundation-funded Center for Gender in Negotiations at the Simmons University School of Business. Professor Kolb served as the executive director of the program on negotiation at Harvard, which I was so excited because I have studied there myself. And she currently directs the Negotiations in the Workplace Project. So she is amazing. I know she's also doing videos with her daughter, who's an expert as well. So we're going to talk about that. You can find out more about her at our website at conflicthealing.com and also at Deborah Kolb, Deborah M. Kolb, and I'm going to spell Deborah for you because sometimes it's spelled differently, DeborahMkolb.com. So we will do that. And I'm just so thrilled. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
This is great.
Great.
Okay, so first of all, I loved in the beginning of your book, you talk about how you decided to write this book. I know you've written several other books, but one of them was The Shadow Negotiation.
Right.
Another one was Everyday Negotiation. And you talked about they wanted you to update that one. And you said, no, I'm going to do this one instead.
This one, right.
Tell us how you decided to write this book.
Well, I do a lot of executive programs for women leaders. And, everybody in every company that I would deal with, everybody knows how to negotiate. They have courses that they take on negotiation with clients and customers, suppliers. But what I discovered was that for women, they really needed to think about how they could negotiate for themselves. When I start one of these programs, I always say to people, I bet you're really good negotiator when you negotiate with suppliers and clients. What makes you good? Oh, I listen. I have the company behind me. I have good relationship with people. And then I say, and what's different when you negotiate for yourself? Oh, much more emotional. I mean, it's about me after all. It's riskier. My reputation is on the line. I don't necessarily able to get people to actually negotiate with me. It's not structured to do it. And so I really wanted to write a book that would help women recognize their opportunities to negotiate and really give them some very concrete tools about what to do. One of the things that I talk about, I read so many things. When people talk about women in negotiation, the main thing they talk about is women and pay. But that is, I'm writing a paper now with a colleague of mine. We're calling it the pot of gold, right? The pot of gold is not the only thing.
Right.
Women have to negotiate. They're often asked to take on jobs they don't want. They have to negotiate about that. They're not on the screen for opportunities. They have to negotiate for that. They're asked to do extra work, invisible work. They have to do that. They have to manage often work and personal life issues. And one of the things we know is disproportionately women are asked to clean up messes. And they have to negotiate for support. So recognizing these things these are the opportunities to negotiate. I think that really opens up people's possibilities where they think about, well, these are real chances for me. And what I like to say to people is, every time somebody asks you to negotiate, asks you to do something,
right,
it's an opportunity to negotiate. You're in the best possible position to do it. So I wrote this book to help women recognize the range of things that they have to negotiate about, recognize some of the ways they might get in their own way, making the first concession in their head, not recognizing that they're in a negotiation, wanting to make people happy. When you do those kinds of things, you don't come to the table empowered to negotiate. And that's what I wanted to help people do.
Yes. And you do it beautifully in here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you gave some examples in the beginning about kind of like what kind of switched into gear for you for like why you should be doing this. And I thought that was really interesting as well. You want to tell like those three little things that kind of like boosted you?
I can't remember what I put in there. I'm not exactly sure. I have to take that out. I don't know what I said.
Yeah.
I didn't go back and read I went back to what I teach about, so I don't.
Yeah,
Tell me
you
what I
were
said.
talking about three things that really hit you, like here we go, like you were talking about that here we go. Just, some of the examples that came to you, like two insights came from experience. First, that one has to create occasions to negotiate at work.
Right.
They're not always obvious.
Right. Right.
And I think that's the thing, some people think things are a challenge. But
Right.
the challenge is really the opposite of the challenge is the opportunity. And
Right.
I think that is some people, they get like, okay, I can't do that. I got to come in tomorrow at 7 a.m. I can't just say, hey, I can't do tomorrow, but I can come in the next day, or I can stay late.
Right. So I think there are several things that became important in this book. So, when we teach negotiation, we teach it in a way that people are already positioned to negotiate, right? You're going to be the buyer, you're going to be the seller.
Right.
When you're negotiating for yourself at work, there is no structure. There's no structure. You have to try to get somebody to negotiate with you. Why do they want to negotiate with you? Because you have something they want. And so the first thing that's really important is, how do you find ways to make your value visible in a currency that has value to them? Why should they negotiate with you?
Right.
They're very happy with the way things are going, so why should they negotiate? So you need to figure out what I call, what is your value proposition?
Right.
You have to be able to tell a story about what you've accomplished and what you've done, and try to think about it in terms of the other person. You also have to recognize that you have leverage, even though you might not think so, right? So, in negotiation, we always talk about your BATNA, right?
Right.
Your best
and let's just explain for the people who don't know what that is.
Your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. You ask yourself, what happens if I can't reach agreement here? And we often think that we're in a weak position, that we don't think we have a good BATNA. Right. But the person you're negotiating with might not be either. I'll tell you a story. This is about a woman. She was had run all the design for reorganization in her division. Mm-hmm. And there was an opening for vice president. She was asked to be the internal candidate. She wasn't chosen. They hired a guy from the outside. And they said to her, we really want to keep you, Greta. What we're going to do is we'd like to give you a retention bonus. Well, she was really not happy, pretty angry. She didn't really have an alternative. She didn't have another job. She didn't have anything offered. But you know what? If she left, they were in real trouble.
Right.
They didn't have anybody that could carry on this work for them.
Right.
She was in a really good bargaining position. And you know what she did?
What she did?
He kept saying, we're going to give you a retention bonus. And she sat there. And he said, it's going to be a really good retention bonus. And she sat there. He said, you were going to be terrific. And she sat there.
Silence is golden, huh?
And he said, what do you want? She said, I'm going to tell you what I want. And she got a huge raise and another opportunity, right? So she had leverage there because she knew what she had done. So if you can figure out what your value is, you can make sure that you own that value, but also think about your alternatives. What happens if you can't reach an agreement? Because that is shifting the bargaining power and leverage. And we often think we don't have it, but often we do. Anytime anybody asks you to do something, you have leverage, right? You have leverage.
Yes.
I always like to.
And I tell my clients, don't give up something unless you're going to get something in return.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It should be of at least equal or even greater value. And
I always tell people, you never want to negotiate about one issue, right? If it's a one issue negotiation, it's a zero-sum game. Win, lose. You're always negotiating for more things. So there's several things that I like to say that are a little bit different when you negotiate for yourself about these kinds of deals, as opposed to when we think about it just regular negotiation. One is the thing is, when you're bringing up an issue to negotiate, you can expect resistance. After all, you're asking for a change. And the person you're negotiating with is probably really happy with the way things are going.
Right.
So I always like to say, you have to come in and anchor with options. You know, we use anchoring in negotiation all the time. Person who makes the first offer anchors the negotiation. The way I talk about it is come in with solutions,
Right.
and have more than one solution. Because then you're not presenting a person with a problem, you're presenting them with solutions. And the second thing I like to say is, in all your solutions, you should be trying to connect what's good for you to what's good for the organization.
Right.
You know, in a lot of these programs that I run, we do role plays, and people role play their own negotiation with each other. And we once did one, we had people role play it, and then we did a little more training on negotiation. We did it again. And here's what was different. The first time they negotiated, it was all about me. This is what I want. I deserve this. I've really been great, da, da, da.
Right.
The second time was, you know, the CEO says we have to cut costs. And let me tell you why what I'm asking for is going to contribute for that.
Yes.
Or we've just lost somebody. And let me tell you why what I'm asking is going to do. Connect what's good for you to what's good for your organization. So you want to anchor with options. The options want to connect what's good for you to what's good for the organization. And always come in with more than one. Because then people are being forced to say, it's not yes or no, it's A or B. And you know, the research is clear, right? A or B, it changes the whole discussion.
Right. I should tell you a fun story about my daughter.
Okay, good.
My daughter has been working as a managing editor for this company in California, and then she broke her foot, and then while she broke her foot and was remotely working from home, she researched about traveling all over the world and working remotely.
Yeah.
So so what she did was, and of course Mama helped her.
Of course.
But anyway, she wrote a proposal to work, remotely from all over Europe, okay? And all over the country, all over.
Right. All the world.
And she showed them, because the name of the company is Road Trip Nation, and they have a book that she helped write about how young people should be going out in the world, right?
Right.
I said, well, Elizabeth,
Perfect.
what I'm trying to do is exactly what they do. Show them how you can write things about what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway.
That is a great example of connecting what's good for everyone, what's good for the organization. Absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect.
So she showed them how, I said, show them what's in it for them.
Right.
Always show what's in it for them.
Exactly.
That I could do this, but I can do this. I can write these.
Right.
I can communicate. I'm 9 hours earlier. I'll have all my work done before you even get there.
That's great.
Anyway, she got
story.
Yes, for the last 2 years, she has been not only Europe, all over Europe, and she's in England right now, but she has been in South America.
Oh, that's wonderful. How
great. In Australia.
Yeah.
And she didn't know how to do it, but of course, learning from you and
you,
other people, and of course me doing it, I said, just keep showing what's in it for them, and make sure you get what you want, but by showing them how this is going to help them.
Right.
And this is 2.5 years, and she's still doing this.
That's great. So the other thing that I like to say about those things is, when you put out those proposals, you're asking for a change. I always say you want to think about people's good reasons for saying no.
Right.
And I always like to say you should have 5. What are their 5 good reasons for saying no? First, if you know about those reasons, you can incorporate them in your proposal, but you can also bring it up in the discussion. You can start out by saying, I'm proposing this. I'm pretty sure you think it's not really going to work for this reason. Let's talk about it, right? You get it out of the open, so then they don't say later on, no, it's not going to work. You've actually introduced it. So always understand there are 5 good reasons for saying no to you. And if you can't think about 5, think about it more. And it's always good reasons from their perspective. We always like to think we're the heroines of our own stories.
Right.
They're the problem. But that's not how they see themselves, right? I always like to say, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm opportunistic, I'm a short-term thinker, I'm out for myself, and I'm conflict-ridden. People don't say that. They always think I'm acting out of good intentions and everything. You need to understand those good intentions.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing I know you talk about in your book is know what some of the things that you are, maybe you don't have, and turn that into something positive. Maybe you don't have enough experience, or you haven't done something, how can you make that?
Right.
So understanding.
Right. So I'd say a few things about that. One is, I think that if you have good information, it really helps you when you ask, you can feel defensible. So I have a case that I use about a woman who wanted this opportunity. She wasn't on the screen for it. It was in a technology company. It was to be the director of sales. And the guy had an old friend guy in mind for it. The things were, she'd done a few things that weren't totally terrific. She had not shown up she had to jump in and save a client, so it didn't look like she was a micromanager a little bit. She had a family, she wasn't available for clients that much. So going into those negotiations, she could focus on all the things she didn't have.
Right.
What I said to her, find other women who have this role. What do they have? If you have good information, then you can feel like it's defensible. When somebody says, I'm not sure because of your family you can be able to do it, you can say, well, yes, I can. Let me tell you how I can, because you have good information. So you don't sort of undermine yourself.
Right.
And I think the most important thing is good information really helps. It's not just about salary. It's, what do people get? What kind of staff do they have when they get a job? Right. What kind of background did they have? Don't go into it without having that information, because then you can undermine yourself. And, I always like to say, if you have good information, then you will feel it's defensible when you ask, and you won't collapse when somebody pushes back on you. You'll stay in that game. And you know what? I always like to say, no is only the beginning, right? So sometimes you're not going to get everything, but right. You learn something. And I guess the other thing I would say relative to what you asked is that, we know that contingent agreements are really great things to use, and they're especially important in these kinds of situations. So now,
let's explain to my audience what we mean by contingent. Yeah.
So you can't get what suppose you're asking for a salary increase, and there's a lid on the top, I can't even think of the word, on it, and people can't give you the increase. But you can get commitment based on your performance that when things change, you will get that benefit.
A performance review or
performance review.
In the income of the company or whatever.
The other thing is, I always like to say pilots are really great, right? So you want to do something, your boss is not clear. You want to start a new project. He said, I don't really think we can do it. So you say, look, let me try it for 3 months, and then we'll evaluate. The reason it's a good contingent agreement, and what contingent agreements are about, is people have different beliefs about the future. Right. You're not proposing this if you didn't think it was going to work. You're doing it because you think it's going to work, right?
Right.
You believe that. Your boss isn't sure, right? So he's willing or she's willing to go along for the pilot because it's not costing that much. But then when you get the results, and you also have to make sure you negotiate the criteria for the results, when the criteria come out 3 months later, then the story is there. It's either worked, and if it's worked, then maybe he'll agree to fund it for real. So contingent agreements are things about the future and based on people's different beliefs about them. You think something's going to happen, the other person isn't sure. That's the basis for making that kind of agreement. And I think pilots, when you're proposing something new, is a great idea. Your daughter, for example, she got what she wanted, but she could have done it as a pilot. If she met resistance, she says,
she actually did it as a pilot. Yeah, let me try this for 6 months, and then they said, we like it better. All this work is done by the time we come in.
Well, my experience is when people do it for contingent agreements, people even forgot that they were on a trial. They just think it happened. It just goes, right? But that's I think it's a great way when you find yourself stuck a little.
Yes. Yeah. So and I think it's less scary for the people involved, for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's try it. And so I think that really works well. I guess the other thing I want to mention is that, when people don't want to give you what you're asking for.
Oh, that's a good one.
They have a tendency to push back.
Yes.
I call them moves. And I've written a lot about this idea of moves and turns. And here's the idea. It's not because people are nasty. They just don't want to give you what you want. So you say, I want to have this role. And they say, you're not ready.
Right.
Or here's my proposal. This will never work.
Right.
Or this is the killer. I really need your help on this one. Right.
Yeah.
How do you come back from that? And so our tendency in those situations is just respond. You're not ready. Yes, I am. Or,
but then you get really like this, you're starting head to head.
Right. So what I like to talk about is what I call turns. And a turn shifts it. So somebody says, you're not ready for this situation. Well, you could ask a question. What would count as ready?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about that, right?
What do
They
you
just
mean
have
by
to shut
ready?
you up, right? Or they say this will never work. Well, let's focus on the problem and see what would work. So you shift to the problem itself.
Right.
When people, and the other thing that I say, when people say, if you get agitated and they say, don't get so upset, our tendency is to say, I am not upset.
Yeah.
What I like to say is, just interrupt. Just sit there.
Yeah.
Just sit there. People always want to fill in. And people use these moves not because they're nasty. It's just they don't necessarily want to give you what you want.
Right.
And if you thought about people's good reasons for saying no to you, often those come up as moves later on in the negotiation. So if you thought about their good reasons for saying no, you can come prepared with terms in mind. Because people always say to me, I always thought about those terms the minute I left the room.
Yeah.
But if you think about good reasons for saying no, you can come in with terms in mind.
Yeah. It's like verbal Aikido too, isn't it? It's like they say, well, you're not ready. And you say, that's really interesting. Help me understand what you mean by that. Because I want to be ready.
Exactly.
It's like you do this little verbal Aikido with them so that you don't agree with them to say, that's a good point. What does that mean? And so I know how to be ready. Right. Then you could say, well, you know what? I have done that. And I have done that.
And what they thought when they said that to you, it was going to shut you up.
Yes.
So having these turns are really important. I have this video that I use with this person about different kinds of moves and turns that you can make. And it's really important to know about those because I think they happen a lot. They happen a lot in performance reviews.
Yes.
A lot in performance reviews. I don't think your performance was that great. They really try to put you down. And having turns under those circumstances are great. I have a little back and forth that I do with people about that. It's great. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the other thing is when you really ask someone, what do you mean?
Yeah.
That puts them, all of a sudden you've shifted, right?
Exactly. You're in the driver's seat.
Explain and maybe they were just flippant about it.
Right.
They can't say anything. Well, I don't know why. I mean, you're
right. But one of the things that often happens is because we haven't negotiated. If you're a person who hasn't negotiated a lot, you've trained people to expect you're not going to negotiate. Right. That story I told you about this woman who sat there silently. Right. People always expected her to say yes. She was a yes person. Every time they asked her, she did it. Her boss was really surprised when she didn't just say yes. And so sometimes you train people. It kind of
throws them off too.
It throws them off. And so if you recognize you have done that, then you can come in prepared to sort of deal with it and turn when that happens. Yeah.
That's so empowering. That is so empowering. And I want to just make sure where we are on time. I think we're just about out of time. I want to make sure that you give your website. And also, I know you're doing videos with your daughter, who's also now. So can you just quickly talk about that way? See how much time we have.
Yeah, good. So my website is deborahmkolb.com, and it has a lot of my articles in it that you can download and read. I write a lot about gender and about negotiation. I have a Harvard Business Review article on that called Be Your Own Best Advocate, which really covers a lot of what we've been talking about. So my daughter, a few years ago, she's an executive in high tech. She's always been the only woman. Now she's actually working for a woman-run company, and she said it is totally different. You wouldn't believe it. And she said to me that she wanted to do negotiation work with me. And so LinkedIn Learning, which is now part of Microsoft, we made two different videos. One is called Negotiating for Leadership Success, which actually covers a lot of what we have talked about. And the second one is called Women at Work. And it talks about, we haven't really talked that much about the challenges that women face, about not having.
We have to have you back then, Deborah.
I would love to come back and talk about that, because I think, understanding the ways that gender plays out in your organization is really important for you to be able to negotiate effectively about it. And so we made the first video together. The second one, she's doing it. I thought she was a better demographic than I was for that, to talk about women at work. And so I think that, and you can buy them separately now. You don't have to belong to LinkedIn Learning. And I think they're very helpful. We've gotten lots of great feedback about people, very practical advice, little caselets. They use a lot of cartoons and things. So
how do we get there? That's the LinkedIn.
If you go to my website, you'll see the connections there for LinkedIn Learning. Negotiating for Leadership Success.
So there's a link to the LinkedIn one. Yeah, it says
Oh,
linkedin.com learning negotiation. Yeah.
Yes, there is. Great. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, we are just, yeah, perfect timing. We do have to have you back again because
I have to.
in this day and age of
Right.
Me Too and everything, we have to talk about this. But this was a good beginning for people, especially.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
Okay. So my book is called Turn Small Wins into Big Gains. I think when you're a woman and you negotiate about these kinds of things, you pave the way for other women to do it. And you change the dialogue. It's not so difficult the next time around. Yes. I have a story in the book about a woman working family issues. She changed actually the way the policy would be implemented because of what she did. So just think about that. It can lead to sort of big gains, small wins to big gains. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Negotiating at work turns small wins into big gains. Deborah Kolb, you are wonderful.
I love talking to you.
I'm thrilled that we get to meet like this because I've been, you've been a guru for me for many years as I read your books. So thank you so much. And we will have you back again. Thank you.
I loved it. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.